Ensign Jessica Hartman stepped onto the flight deck of the USS Independence with a mix of nerves and determination. The carrier was a city at sea, a floating fortress surrounded by endless blue water, humming with the energy of a crew ready for anything. For Jessica, this was the beginning of a dream she'd chased for years, serving as an officer in the US Navy, flying missions, and proving herself in a world dominated by tradition and tough competition from the moment she arrived. However, Jessica realized that the road ahead would be anything but easy. The crew was tight-knit, made up mostly of men who had spent years working side by side, and to many of them, she was an outsider. Jessica was young, just 24, and she carried herself with a quiet confidence that some mistook for naivety. Her carefully maintained appearance, neat uniform, clean makeup, and confident smile drew attention. But it wasn't always the kind of attention she wanted. Within days, whispers started circulating. It wasn't long before a nickname spread through the mess hall and echoed in the corridors. Benchwarmer Barbie, a cruel joke that poked fun at Jessica's looks and perceived inexperience. To them, she was the girl who stood on the sidelines, who wasn't quite ready to be in the thick of action, more suited to cheering from the bench than leading from the deck. Jessica first heard the nickname during a routine briefing when a group of junior officers laughed at a joke that referenced her. She kept her face steady, but inside, it felt like a punch to the gut. The name reduced everything she had worked for into a stereotype. It was a dismissive label that made her feel invisible, a placeholder rather than a player. She thought back to her childhood in a small Midwestern town where she had grown up idolizing the pilots and officers who visited for recruitment fairs. Jessica had always been drawn to the skies, fascinated by stories of courage and technical skill. She spent hours reading about flight operations, devouring manuals and documentaries about naval aviation. She had trained hard through the Naval Academy, pushed herself through grueling physical tests, and earned her commission with pride. And yet, here she was, stuck with a nickname that undermined her every accomplishment. Still, Jessica refused to let the nickname define her. Each morning, she would stand a little taller as she donned her uniform and clipped her aviator wings over her heart. Every day, she showed up early for training sessions and stayed late to study emergency launch protocols. She learned the complex systems of the carrier's flight deck, memorized the steps for every possible scenario, and volunteered for extra duties no one else wanted. She wanted to earn their respect, not through words, but through actions. Despite the cold shoulders and snide remarks, a few crew members noticed Jessica's dedication. Chief Petty Officer Daniels, a grizzled veteran with decades of experience, took her under his wing. Unlike others, he saw past the surface and recognized the potential behind the nickname. "You don't have to be the loudest voice in the room, Hartman," he told her one evening. As they reviewed launch procedures, skill beats doubt every time. "Keep your head down, work hard, and they'll come around. You're here to do a job, and one day, they'll need you." Jessica clung to those words like a lifeline. The nickname still echoed, but inside, a quiet fire was growing. She wasn't going to be a joke or a footnote on this ship. She was going to be a vital part of the crew, no matter how long it took. In the mess hall, she ate her meals alone or with the few officers willing to talk to her. She heard the laughter and stories of the others, sometimes feeling like an outsider looking in. But she also observed, learning the rhythms and relationships of the crew, waiting for the moment when she could prove herself. That moment felt far away, a distant horizon on the vast ocean she now called home, but Jessica believed it would come. She just had to be ready. And as the USS Independence sailed further into open water, surrounded by an unpredictable sea and endless sky, Jessica prepared herself for whatever challenge lay ahead. The nickname was a wound, but it was also a challenge, a gauntlet thrown down by those who underestimated her. She would answer it. Weeks passed aboard the USS Independence, and Jessica's days became a routine of rigorous training and patient waiting. She was no longer the wide-eyed newcomer, but the crew still hadn't given her the chance she so desperately wanted. Each day, she stood at attention, watching others take the lead in the drills she had studied endlessly. Jessica had memorized every step of the emergency launch protocols. She could recite them in her sleep and execute them flawlessly on the simulators below deck. She knew the inner workings of the catapult launch system better than most. Yet, When it came time to put theory into practice, she was repeatedly overlooked. Seasoned launch officers, mostly men with years of experience and battle scars, were chosen time and again to operate during live drills. Her requests to step in during less critical launches were politely declined, often with a nod to wait until you get more experience. The nickname Benchwarmer Barbie clung to her like a shadow, whispered by some crew members who doubted her abilities. Sometimes, Jessica overheard conversations behind closed doors. "She's all looks, no grit," one said. Another shrugged and joked, maybe she should stick to filing reports. The sting of their skepticism burned, but Jessica refused to let it show. She reminded herself every day that respect was earned, not given. Despite the frustration, she threw herself into the work harder than ever. Her mornings began before dawn with strength training and cardio, pushing her body to meet the physical demands of the carrier's high-stress environment. Afternoons were spent in classrooms or on simulators, running emergency launches over and over, tweaking her timing and refining her reflexes. It was not just about proving others wrong. Jessica wanted to be absolutely ready when the moment came. She studied the failures and successes of past rescue operations, learning how split-second decisions had saved lives. She spoke to pilots, medical teams, and technicians to understand every aspect of the mission. Each detail added a layer of confidence beneath her calm exterior. Her perseverance did not go unnoticed by everyone. Chief Petty Officer Daniels, the grizzled veteran who had quietly encouraged her from the start, kept an eye on Jessica's progress. One evening, after a particularly long training session, he pulled her aside. "Jessica," he said, his voice low and serious, "you're sharper than some of the guys I've seen in their first year. Don't let the noise get to you. They'll have to take notice eventually." Jessica nodded, grateful for his words. "I just want my chance to prove it," she replied, a hint of frustration still in her voice. Daniels smiled, a rare softness in his gruff demeanor. "Patience, it'll come, and when it does, you'll be ready." Days later, during a routine launch drill, Jessica stood at the ready, heart pounding as the operators carried out their tasks. She watched the catapult system in action, her hands itching to take control, but the drill passed without her involvement. Afterward, some of the other officers came over, clapping her on the back, but Jessica's smile was tight. She wanted more than encouragement. She wanted action. One afternoon, during a quiet moment on deck, Jessica confided in Lieutenant Mark Evans, a pilot who had noticed her dedication. "Mark, do you think they'll ever let me handle a real launch?" she asked, scanning the horizon. He looked thoughtful. "Honestly, it's tough. This place runs on experience and trust. But you're doing everything right. The only way to earn their trust is to be ready when it matters most." Jessica absorbed his words like a lifeline. She knew trust was a currency hard-earned in the Navy, and until she had it, she'd remain a spectator, a bench warmer in their eyes. Her days continued in this pattern of preparation and waiting. The nickname still echoed sometimes, but Jessica was learning to silence the voices that tried to tell her she didn't belong. The ship was her home now, and the ocean stretched before her with endless possibilities. She clung to the belief that her moment would come, the day when all the practice, patience, and persistence would pay off, when she could finally step from the shadows and into the role she was born to fill. And deep inside, beneath the doubts and the waiting, Jessica's quiet fire burned brighter than ever. The USS Independence cut through the choppy waters of the Pacific Ocean under a grey, overcast sky. It was the third week into a month-long deployment, and the ship hummed with the familiar rhythm of drills, maintenance, and quiet camaraderie. For Ensign Jessica Hartman, it was just another day spent sharpening her skills and waiting for the moment she had been training for. But that moment arrived sooner than anyone expected. An urgent crackle came over the ship's communication system, piercing through the hum of the flight deck. "Mayday, mayday, F-18 down, pilot ejected, location 15 miles northwest of carrier. Parachute malfunction reported, time critical." The words hit the crew like a shockwave. An F-18 Hornet, one of the Navy's most advanced fighter jets, had gone down during a routine training exercise. The pilot, Lieutenant Commander David Hawk Hawkins, a decorated aviator known for his cool under pressure, had ejected, but his parachute hadn't deployed properly. That meant he was now stranded in the vast, unforgiving ocean with little chance of survival unless a swift rescue was launched. the ship's captain barked orders with laser focus. Prepare for immediate rescue operation, launch helicopter, and rescue boats ASAP. Jessica's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the scramble unfold. Crew members raced across the deck, securing gear, readying vessels, and scanning the waves with binoculars. But the ocean was angry today. Rough swells rocked the carrier violently, tossing equipment and men alike. The wind had picked up, making conditions dangerous. Within minutes, the bridge reported that the rescue helicopter had a mechanical issue and was grounded indefinitely. The rescue boats could not safely launch due to the carrier's steep pitch and the turbulent sea state. Time was slipping away. Jessica stood near the emergency launch station, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. She knew that in situations like this, seconds could mean the difference between life and death. Where's the rescue drone submersible? Jessica asked the officer beside her. It's ready, but it's never been launched in real emergency conditions, he replied, his voice edged with uncertainty. No one's authorized to launch it except the senior operators. They're all busy coordinating other efforts. Jessica's mind raced. The drone submersible was a small, remotely operated device designed for rapid deployment in sea rescues, where boats or helicopters couldn't reach. It could locate and secure a pilot in the water, deploying a life raft to keep them afloat until extraction, but launching it required someone skilled, steady under pressure, someone who could handle the controls with precision. Jessica glanced toward the bridge, where the captain's eyes scanned the deck. Then, unexpectedly, his gaze locked onto hers. A nod followed, an unspoken command. You're up, Hartman, he said firmly. Jessica's heart jumped. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the chance to step beyond the sidelines and prove herself when it truly mattered. The chatter on deck dimmed as all eyes turned toward her. She swallowed the lump in her throat and sprinted to the emergency launch station, adrenaline flooding her veins. She slid into the control seat, her hands finding the familiar buttons and levers. Her training kicked in instantly. Every step she had drilled, every simulation she had run, came alive. Initializing launch sequence, Jessica called out to the crew around her, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. Crew members watched with a mix of surprise and anticipation. For some, the Benchwarmer Barbie had suddenly become the center of the rescue operation. Outside, the sky darkened as the wind howled across the deck. Jessica's fingers danced over the controls, adjusting angles, calculating trajectories, and syncing with the carrier's systems. This has to be perfect, she thought. No margin for error. The tension was palpable as she readied the catapult. Every second counted. She held her breath. Then, with a sudden roar, the rescue drone was launched into the stormy sea, a small beacon of hope cutting through the turmoil. Jessica's gaze never wavered. This was no longer just a drill, this was real, and she was ready. Jessica Hartman's breath came fast but steady as the emergency rescue drone roared off the catapult and plunged into the turbulent sea. The roar of the launch faded, replaced by the relentless crash of waves and the whistling wind sweeping across the deck of the USS Independence. Around her, the crew was tense, some wide-eyed, others gripping railings as if their lives depended on the success of this launch. For Jessica, every training exercise she had endured boiled down to this one moment. She was no longer the Benchwarmer Barbie whispered about behind closed doors. She was the officer responsible for a man's life, and she was determined not to fail. Her hands flew over the control panel, guiding the drone's descent as it bobbed precariously on the ocean's surface. The rain had begun, tiny droplets speckling the windshield of the control room. Visibility was poor, but the sensors and sonar fed Jessica the information she needed. Coordinates locked, she announced, her voice steady despite the adrenaline racing through her veins. The drone's sensors were scanning for the pilot's signal, a beacon emitted from a wrist device embedded in his survival suit. Come on, Jessica whispered, eyes fixed on the sonar display. The seconds stretched into agonizing minutes. Outside, the sea was unforgiving, waves towering and tossing the tiny drone like a toy boat in a storm. The carrier's deck pitched with the motion, and Jessica's legs trembled slightly beneath her. Behind her, a few crew members had gathered, their faces a mix of disbelief and hope. Lieutenant Mark Evans, the pilot who had once spoken to her about trust, stood silent with his arms crossed. Suddenly, A blip appeared on the sonar, faint but unmistakable. The drone had found the pilot. Target acquired, Jessica breathed. Initiating recovery sequence, the drone's mechanical arms extended, carefully maneuvering toward the figure barely visible in the icy water. Lieutenant Commander David Hawk Hawkins was unconscious, bobbing just beneath the churning surface. Jessica watched as the drone secured the life raft around the pilot, its inflatable sides expanding to cradle him gently. The raft's automatic heating system kicked in, a small but vital comfort against the cold. Relief flooded Jessica's body, but she remained focused. The rescue wasn't over. The raft had to hold until the helicopter could safely extract the pilot, a precarious window in rough conditions. "Hold steady," she murmured. Hold steady. The drone remained tethered to the ship's systems, its position tracked constantly by Jessica and her team. She relayed updates to the bridge, her voice calm but urgent. Minutes later, the helicopter's engines thundered to life. Weather conditions had improved just enough for a takeoff. Jessica allowed herself a brief smile. Her launch had bought precious time. From her vantage point, she watched as the chopper swooped down, the winch lowering into the raft. The crew carefully hoisted Lieutenant Commander Hawkins aboard, wrapping him in warm blankets. Jessica's heart leapt as she saw the pilot's chest rise and fall alive. The crowd on deck erupted in quiet applause, a rare moment of shared relief. Lieutenant Mark Evans approached her, eyes shining with respect. "You did it, Hartman. You saved his life." Jessica shook her head slightly, overwhelmed. "We did it, all of us," but inside, she felt a profound shift. The girl who had been ignored, underestimated, and branded Benchwarmer Barbie had risen in the most unexpected way, becoming the linchpin in a high-stakes rescue that no one else could manage. Later that evening, as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting a soft orange glow over the waves, Jessica stood alone on the flight deck. The storm had passed, but the memory of the chaos lingered. She looked out over the endless ocean and allowed herself a quiet moment of pride. This was what she had trained for. This was why she had persevered. For the first time since arriving on the USS Independence, Jessica Hartman felt like she truly belonged. The roar of the rescue drone's engine was still echoing faintly in Jessica Hartman's ears when the ship's captain called an emergency meeting on the bridge. The carrier was alive with urgency, but beneath the chaos, Jessica felt a calm focus settling over her. The operation wasn't over yet. The pilot was safe for now, but extraction was still perilous. The sea was unforgiving. Waves crashed against the hull with relentless fury, their white foam whipped into spirals by the harsh wind. Visibility was low, and the storm had not fully passed. The helicopter was ready, but only just. The slightest miscalculation could spell disaster. Jessica returned to the emergency launch station, this time preparing for a different task, coordinating the rescue drone's delicate maneuvering, ensuring the raft remained stable as the chopper closed in. The crew's usual banter was gone, replaced by a tense silence broken only by clipped commands and urgent radio chatter. Every eye was on Jessica. She adjusted the drone's positioning with a precision born of hours of simulation and study. The controls felt familiar under her fingertips, the feedback from the systems responding like extensions of her own senses. "Steady," she whispered, gripping the edge of the console. On deck, Lieutenant Mark Evans, the pilot she had come to respect, paced nervously. When their eyes met, he gave her a brief nod, a silent affirmation of trust that bolstered her resolve. Jessica focused on the screens displaying the drone's sonar and thermal imaging, watching the pilot's tiny figure surrounded by the inflated raft. The challenge wasn't just in navigating rough seas, but in battling time. Hypothermia was an invisible enemy, creeping in with every passing minute. The pilot was barely conscious when the drone found him, and the rescue team needed to get him aboard quickly. Suddenly, a fierce gust of wind rocked the carrier, sending the deck trembling underfoot. The drone's tether line jolted, and Jessica's heart skipped a beat. "Hold position," she ordered firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. Her hands moved quickly, compensating for the sudden shift, recalibrating the drone's balance. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the chill in the air. Minutes later, the helicopter's rotors sliced through the thickening fog, the sound growing louder, a beacon of hope against the storm. Jessica watched as the rescue winch descended slowly, its cable swinging in the turbulent air. The crew aboard the helicopter moved with practiced precision, aiming for the raft that Jessica was keeping steady from hundreds of feet away, the raft rocked violently, threatening to capsize. Jessica's fingers trembled, but she kept them steady. Almost there, she murmured, the winch hook connected with the raft's harness. Slowly, the pilot was lifted out of the icy water, and the helicopter ascended into the darkening sky. The crew on deck broke into cheers, but Jessica remained focused until the helicopter was safely out of sight. Only then did she allow herself a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Lieutenant Mark Evans approached her, a smile breaking across his face. "You nailed it, Hartman. You were incredible." Jessica smiled back, the exhaustion and adrenaline mixing into a flood of relief. "We did it," she said simply, knowing the word "we" was important. This rescue had been a team effort, but she had been the one to launch them into action. That evening, the crew gathered for a debriefing. The captain praised Jessica's cool-headedness and technical skill under pressure, publicly acknowledging her crucial role in the operation. The nickname Benchwarmer Barbie was nowhere to be heard. Instead, whispers of respect and admiration began to circulate. Jessica's quiet strength had shattered old assumptions and earned her the trust she'd fought for since day one, but Jessica knew the battle for respect wasn't over. There would be more challenges ahead, more doubts to silence. For now, though, she allowed herself to savor this victory. As she stood on the deck later, watching the sun set over the restless sea, Jessica felt something shift deep inside her, a newfound confidence that came from facing fear head-on and coming through it stronger. She was no longer just a hopeful recruit waiting in the wings. She was a rescuer, a leader, and she was ready for whatever came next. The USS Independence had barely settled back into its routine when the ripple effect of Jessica Hartman's heroic rescue began to wash over the ship. The nickname Benchwarmer Barbie, once whispered with a smirk or a scarf, was fading into oblivion. In its place came something far more powerful, respect. But respect in the military is never handed out lightly. It's earned, and sometimes earned slowly. Jessica felt the subtle shift everywhere she went. During morning briefings, officers no longer talked over her or ignored her suggestions. In the mess hall, conversations included her, and sometimes the laughter was genuine rather than mocking. The crew who once doubted her abilities now approached her with a new kind of deference. Even the senior officers, who had kept her sidelined during launches and drills, began to call on her expertise. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blake, one of the ship's seasoned flight officers, was the first to reach out. "Jessica," Sarah said one afternoon as they stood near the aircraft elevator, "I want to commend you for your quick thinking during the rescue. That launch was textbook, and your composure under pressure was impressive." Jessica nodded, a small smile breaking through the usual reserve she kept. "Thank you, ma'am. I've trained for moments like that." Sarah's eyes softened. "You've earned your place here, Hartman. Don't ever doubt it." Those words echoed in Jessica's mind long after their conversation ended. The quiet confidence that had driven her to keep pushing, even when others dismissed her, was now visible to those around her. But the transition wasn't without its challenges. Not everyone was ready to let go of the old perceptions. Some crew members still muttered Benchwarmer Barbie in the shadows, and Jessica overheard snide comments that hinted at resentment or jealousy. One evening, as she reviewed flight deck protocols in the officers' lounge, she caught a glimpse of a smirk from a junior officer she barely knew. Instead of retreating into silence, Jessica met his gaze. "What's your name?" she asked, her tone calm but firm. "Petty Officer Simmons," he replied, a bit taken aback. "Well, Petty Officer Simmons," Jessica said, standing a little straighter, "if you have any questions about the drone launch or rescue protocols, I'm available. Otherwise, I suggest you focus on your own duties." The smirk faded, replaced by a nod. It was a small victory, but one that reminded Jessica she was no longer invisible. Throughout the weeks that followed, Jessica took every opportunity to prove herself. She volunteered to assist in flight, deck operations, studied advanced rescue techniques, and even helped train junior officers on the drone systems. Her work did not go unnoticed. Chief Petty Officer Daniels, the grizzled veteran who had first encouraged her, pulled her aside one afternoon. "Jessica," he said gruffly, "you're no longer the girl I saw come aboard. You're part of this crew now. More than that, you're a leader. Keep that fire." Jessica smiled. "Thank you, Chief. I won't let you down." Beyond the ship's walls, word of the rescue spread through the naval community. The carrier's commanding officers recommended Jessica for a commendation, recognizing her critical role in the operation. But more importantly than medals or awards, Jessica found something she had never fully had before: confidence in herself. She reflected on how far she had come, from the girl mocked as Benchwarmer Barbie to the officer trusted to launch a rescue drone in life-or-death circumstances. The experience transformed her. She no longer doubted her place or her abilities. Instead, she embraced the challenge of earning respect every day, and yet, deep down, Jessica knew this was only the beginning. The sea was vast and unpredictable. Her career was just unfolding, and the Navy would test her in ways she hadn't yet imagined. But whatever storms lay ahead, Jessica Hartman was ready. She had faced the tide and emerged not just unbroken, but stronger. The weeks after the rescue mission felt like a new dawn for Ensign Jessica Hartman. The once dreaded moniker Benchwarmer Barbie was now almost unheard of. What replaced it was an unspoken acknowledgement of her grit, skill, and unwavering dedication. She was no longer a shadow on the sidelines. She was stepping into the light, yet Jessica understood that respect, especially in the Navy, was a fragile thing. It could be earned in a moment but lost in a second. She was determined to maintain the trust she had fought so hard to win. Every day brought fresh challenges, from overseeing launch protocols to managing crisis simulations and mentoring new recruits. Jessica tackled each task with the same fierce determination that had guided her through months of waiting and doubt. One afternoon, as the USS Independence glided through calm seas, Jessica received an unexpected message. The commanding officer wanted her on the bridge immediately. Her heart quickened, but this time it was not fear. It was anticipation. When she arrived, the captain was standing by the large panoramic windows, his expression serious but not unkind. "Ensign Hartman," he began, "I want to commend you on your recent performance. Your actions during the rescue operation demonstrated exceptional courage and skill." Jessica nodded respectfully. "Thank you, sir. I'm just doing my duty." The captain smiled, a rare warmth in his eyes. "That may be, but it's clear you're ready for more responsibility. I'm recommending you for the role of assistant launch officer." The news stunned her. The assistant launch officer was a critical position, directly involved in managing aircraft launches, a role that had seemed like a distant dream not long ago. Jessica swallowed the lump in her throat and said, "I won't let you down, sir." "Good," the captain replied. "You start your new duties next week." Leaving the bridge, Jessica felt a surge of pride mixed with a sense of gravity. She was stepping into a position where every decision could impact lives. The trust placed in her was both an honor and a weight. Back on the flight deck, word of her promotion spread quickly. Some crew members nodded with approval, others watched her with quiet curiosity. Jessica's journey from the overlooked Benchwarmer Barbie to a key officer was becoming a story whispered across the ship, but with promotion came new pressures. The assistant launch officer had to coordinate with multiple teams, manage high-stakes launches, and make split-second decisions. Jessica's training intensified as she immersed herself in the nuances of the role. Late nights found her poring over manuals and operational checklists. She shadowed experienced launch officers, absorbing every detail. She practiced simulations repeatedly until her hands and mind moved as one with the complex systems. One evening, as she reviewed launch procedures in the dim glow of the control room, Lieutenant Mark Evans stopped by. "You've come a long way," he said quietly. Jessica smiled, grateful for the support. "I'm still learning, but I'm ready," Mark nodded. "You've got the heart. That's what counts." The days grew busier. Jessica juggled her duties with precision, earning a reputation for calm under pressure and clear communication. Her confidence grew, but she remained humble, always remembering the months she had spent on the sidelines, waiting for her chance. One afternoon, during a complex launch involving multiple jets, an unexpected system alert flashed on Jessica's console, a hydraulic issue threatening to delay the operation. The tension on the deck spiked instantly. The launch window was tight, and any delay could cascade into a critical mission failure. Jessica took a deep breath and stepped forward. She quickly assessed the situation, coordinated with the technical team, and devised an alternate launch sequence that would bypass the malfunction. "Prepare for alternate launch," she commanded firmly. The crew moved swiftly under her direction. The jets roared to life, launching successfully despite the complication. As the carrier settled back into routine, Jessica allowed herself a moment to absorb what had just happened. She had made a difference, not just in one dramatic rescue, but in the ongoing mission. Every day, every decision, every launch, Jessica Hartman had risen from the shadows. The girl once mocked for her ambition had become a respected leader, and as the sun dipped low over the endless horizon, casting golden light across the deck, Jessica knew she had only just begun. The sun rose over the USS Independence, casting long golden rays across the flight deck, where Ensign Jessica Hartman stood tall, no longer the girl who had once been sidelined and underestimated, but a leader forged in the fires of challenge and perseverance. Her journey from Benchwarmer Barbie to hero had been marked by determination, courage, and an unwavering refusal to give up. Now, as assistant launch officer, Jessica's role was more crucial than ever. Every launch was a test of skill, of judgment, and of trust, but Jessica's story was no longer just about her. It was about the legacy she was building, legacy that would ripple through the ranks, inspiring others who struggled to find their place. Months had passed since the rescue of Lieutenant Commander Hawkins. His recovery had been slow, but steady, and he personally thanked Jessica during a ceremony held on the carrier's deck. "You saved my life," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "And you saved the lives of everyone here by proving what courage really means." Jessica nodded, humbled. "We're all part of the same crew. I just did what needed to be done." That humility endeared her even more to the crew. The Navy took notice as well. Jessica's superiors recommended her for the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, an honor recognizing her vital role in the rescue and her exemplary performance. But beyond medals and commendations, the greatest reward for Jessica was the change she had sparked in the culture aboard the USS Independence. Junior officers and enlisted crew members who had once dismissed her now sought her guidance and mentorship. She became a beacon for those who felt overlooked or underestimated, the living example that perseverance could break through even the toughest barriers. One evening, as she prepared for a training session on drone operations, a young recruit approached her hesitantly. "Ensign Hartman." The recruit asked, I've heard your story. You're the reason I'm not giving up." Jessica smiled warmly. "Good, never give up, keep pushing. The Navy needs people like you." Her words were more than encouragement. They were a challenge, a call to rise above doubts and defy expectations. Jessica's path had not been easy. She had faced skepticism, isolation, and the sting of rejection. But she had refused to be defined by others' opinions. Her heroism had been born not from extraordinary powers or destiny, but from simple, relentless grit. The nickname Benchwarmer Barbie had become a distant memory, a symbol of a past that no longer held power over her. As the USS Independence sailed onward, Jessica stood on the deck, watching the endless expanse of the ocean stretch before her. The horizon was vast and unknown. Much like her future in the Navy, she knew there would be more storms to face, more challenges to overcome, but she was ready. For Jessica Hartman, courage was not a one-time act but a way of life. It was the strength to launch into the unknown, to rise when others doubted, and to lead with quiet confidence. Her story was a reminder that sometimes the greatest heroes are those who begin on the sidelines, watching, waiting, and preparing for the moment when they can step forward and change everything. And change everything she did.